Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes. Hare Krishna, yes. So thank you everyone again for coming. And yes, this afternoon, this evening, on Labor Day, we are talking about why and how and what to do when spirituality becomes boring. On Labor Day, what about if you feel like your spiritual practices are like hard labor? It's very interesting. The Sanskrit word for labor is shrama. Shrama means hard work, hard labor, something which one has to almost force themselves to do even when they feel like they're not getting much out of it. So what to sometimes do if we have this experience in our spiritual journey? Of course, we know Krishna consciousness is full of rasa, full of taste, because we all had a glimpse of that. When I first came to temples, spiritual places, I had a notion that a temple means a place which is serious, silent, and still. You stay still, you pray, you're serious, you're grave, and there's not much movement there and there's not much engagement. But when I came to the Hare Krishna movement, all my conceptions were well and truly smashed because there wasn't much silence in any of these places. In fact, it sounded like they went to the other extreme, noise-induced hearing loss. It wasn't a very still place because there was a lot of movement and there was also a lot of dancing. And it definitely wasn't a serious place because there was a lot of smiling, a lot of joy. And I remember speaking to one of the devotees and I said, I didn't have this conception of a spiritual place. And he said, well, when you're happy, what do? You smile. When you're happy, what do? You sing. When you're happy, what do? You dance. And therefore he said, how can it be that in a spiritual place there's no smiling, there's no singing, there's no dancing? These are the most universal forms of emotional joy and expression. And so yes, this convinced me. I was not one to dance for sure. And the first time I remember dancing in a kirtan, I was like, this Krishna consciousness is definitely true, because if it can get me dancing, it must be. So yes, even Friedrich Nietzsche said, I will only believe in a God who knows how to dance. And so people have this conception that spirituality is very serious and formal, but here we see it's a natural outpouring of rasa. But what to do? What to do when the higher taste doesn't seem that much higher? What to do when spirituality seems like it's just a duty, just a responsibility, but we don't feel like we're really connecting with the essence of it? What do we do in these situations? How do we cope with this? So today I'll share with you some ideas, but the first thing I want to share with you is that this is already predicted in the scriptures. Because in the Mahabharata, there's a very beautiful verse. Dvave vaya chinta mukto paramananda apluto yo vimugdo jado balo yogunebhya param gataha. In this verse of the Mahabharata is mentioned Dvaveva chintaya mukto. There are only two people in this world, two kinds of people in this world who are chintaya mukto, or freed from any type of misery and completely happy. There's only two types of people in this world who are happy. Number one, the person who is completely ignorant And number two, the one who is completely self-realized. Of course, the one who is ignorant is reveling in a different kind of joy which doesn't actually have much substance. As they say in English, ignorance is bliss. But that person is in the ignorance of their own misery and experiencing some kind of bliss. But the other person who experiences bliss is the one who's self-realized. And according to the Mahabharata, anyone who's in between experiences some level of dissatisfaction. Because we're almost in the middle of two extremes. And so that's a big space that is inhabited. And therefore the scriptures are full of descriptions, full of passages which help us understand how to navigate this path in between, where we can't go back to our ignorance, but at the same time we can't grasp that level of spiritual realization, and therefore we seem to experience some level of dissatisfaction. So different books explain to us how to navigate that path. Perhaps the most famous book is a book written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a great teacher, who writes in a book, Madhurya Kadambini, of a stage of spiritual life known as Anishtita Bhajana Kriya, or unsteady devotion. And in this stage of unsteady devotion, he explains that there are 6 characteristics. Utsaha Mai, a false sense of accomplishment that one has, an idealism which is very high but still very immature, and an idealism which ultimately lets someone down because they think like, I got it, I know it, I'm there, I've already reached there, that was easy. And then later on they realize that there's much more to the journey than what they initially thought. Later on he says, in the unsteady devotional stage, we will come to the experience of Ghanatarala. Ghanatarala means thick and thin. We will experience a pendulum of movement in terms of being inspired and sometimes being indifferent, and then other times being inspired and then again indifferent. And day to day we may experience some of this swaying, toing and froing between these two. Then he explains, on this journey of Anishtita Bhakti there is Vyuda Vikalpa. One will be suffering from indecision. One will always seem to be unsure about where they should go, what decisions to make. In this stage one puts so much emphasis on the externals, thinking that if I get the external things perfect, then I'll be happy in spiritual life. And therefore they're constantly on the mental platform, as we'd say, about what decision to make, because they're putting all the emphasis on the externals. And like this he goes on and on. I won't describe all the stages, but the point here is that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Ghanatarala. It's expected that some days we will feel inspired and other days not inspired. However, we can always do a spiritual health check to see where we are. So what we did some years ago is we developed all of these questions based on descriptions in the scripture of one who is moving in a progressive direction in their devotion. And these questions, I'll just tell you 7 of them. And if you like, you can mark yourself. If you want to do a spiritual health check, I'm offering it today for free. And if you think it counts for you very strongly, then it's a 5. And if you think it doesn't really apply to you at all, it's a 0 or a 1. And everything in between is different degrees of that. So you can count in your mind what your score would be. For anyone born before 1990, you can even do it in your head without use of a calculator. No offense to the Gen Z. Okay, question number 1. I am eager and enthusiastic to learn and grasp new insights in Krishna consciousness. Don't be humble. Be humble, but don't be humble in terms of don't be falsely humble. Give yourself a number between 1 and 5. 5 if that's really true. I am eager and enthusiastic to grasp new insights in Krishna consciousness. Number 2, I have spiritual friendships where I can be completely honest with the other person. True? Not true. Give yourself a number. Number 3, I think about the ultimate goal of life that I have on a daily basis. On a daily basis, I'm constantly thinking about what my ultimate goal in life is. Do you have that kind of remembrance on a day-to-day basis? Is that part of your day-to-day thinking? Number 4, I'm focused and present while doing spiritual activities. When I'm in a class, when I'm hearing, when I'm chanting, when I'm worshipping, when I'm serving, I'm present. I'm really there. 1 to 5. Number 5, I feel really happy when I see other spiritual people striving and finding success in their spiritual journey. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. Are we genuinely happy? Does it make, when we see someone who's doing really well, does that genuinely bring joy to our heart spontaneously? Number 6, my spiritual goals are more exciting than my material goals. We all have some level of material goals, things we have to do, things we have to achieve in this world. And we all have spiritual goals. Which are more exciting for you? Which do you invest more of your being in? And number 7, I have a great hope that I will make it to spiritual perfection in this life. In all my feelings of being inadequate, in all my feelings that I have such a long way to go, in all my feelings of falling short, I still in my heart have a deep hope that I will make it. These are not just random questions, but we look at the different descriptions which are given of someone who's actually spiritually advancing. And questions like this help us to understand what kind of trajectory we're moving on, whether we're moving towards our cherished goal in a progressive way or not. So, you got a number? Anyone got over 25? Yeah, these are things you can think about. Generally, if it's over something like 20, 25, that's a very good sign. For most of us, of course, these things also vary on a day-to-day basis. But it's really important to do this kind of introspection, because unless we know what kind of trajectory we're on, unless we know what kind of direction in which we're moving, it's very difficult to actually do any course correction if that's required. And sometimes you may score very high on some of these and very low on other ones. So that's very useful as well, because we're all doing good in some aspects, but we need work in other aspects, and that may give you some idea of where to put the attention. So the first point I just want to make to you, when someone asks the question, why is my spirituality becoming boring, is that to some extent that is a part of the journey. That is a part of the journey, because spiritual happiness is not a binary thing. Either you have it or you don't. But spiritual happiness is something like a flower which is blossoming. And that blossoming flower develops in different ways. It shows its color, it shows its fragrance, it shows its full beauty over a period of time. And there are different seasons that flower has to go through, and there are different things that the gardener has to do at different stages, even before the fragrance and beauty arises. And so our spiritual journey is something like that. This analogy of being a gardener is something that's used again and again in spiritual literature. And it's a very interesting kind of metaphor for someone like me who grew up in the urban jungle of northwest London. The gardening analogies are sometimes not so relatable, but over time I've grown to understand that it's such a beautiful metaphor if you think deeply about it. That yes, this bhakti lata beach, this seed of devotion is in our heart, and just as we nourish and care for a plant, a tree, a flower, or whatever, it's a very similar process in developing our bhakti. Today what I want to do is just share with you 5 principles given by a great teacher that all of you know, Bhishma Dev. And these 5 principles are given by the great teacher Bhishma Dev when he's explaining to us how to overcome mediocrity. And when I read these, they were very striking. I felt them to be very, very relevant. I felt them to be universally applicable to different parts of our lives. And so I'll share those with you. But before I do, just to give you some background, all of you are familiar that there was the battle of Kurukshetra. Of course, at the beginning of that battle, Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Arjuna understood who he was, what he had to do, and the battle commenced. That battle continued on for 18 days. And at the end of that battle, so many hundreds and thousands and millions of people were killed. But the net result of that battle was that the Pandavas, the 5 righteous brothers, emerged victorious. And of them, Yudhishthira, who was the oldest, was crowned as the next royalty, the next monarch. Of course, for Yudhishthira, he was very soft-hearted. Although he knew that it was his duty to take on this responsibility to be the next king, he was extremely hesitant because he realized that so much suffering, so much pain, so much unrest had occurred in bringing him to that point where he could take up the throne. So he was, although victorious, still very much despondent. In fact, even after his victory, he offered the throne to his own brother Bhima. He said, maybe you should just be on the throne. I don't think I can sit there and do it. I have too many regrets in my heart. But everyone encouraged Yudhishthira, no, you must do that. And finally what happened is that Krishna one day was in his meditation, and Yudhishthira actually came to see him. And Krishna was in a meditation, and Yudhishthira was somewhat baffled, and he wanted to know, Krishna, who are you meditating on? And knowing Krishna's exalted position, and when Krishna opened his eyes, Krishna said, I'm meditating on my devotee. Yudhishthira said, who? Krishna said, I'm meditating on my great devotee Bhishma, because he is in the final days of his life on the bed of arrows, and he's about to leave this world. So then Krishna looked at Yudhishthira, and Krishna said, Bhishma Dev is a fountain of knowledge. He's a treasure house of wisdom. And when he departs this world, that wisdom will also leave this world. And therefore, what we should do is we should go to that place and we should speak to him. He's about to die. Let's go and pay our final respects and hear from him. So they're about to leave. Krishna told Yudhishthira, I want you to dress in your most royal outfits. So Yudhishthira said, what do you mean? Like, when you're going to meet a person who's about to leave this world, you generally don't wear like your best clothes as though it's like a party, you know, it's like... So Krishna said, no, I want you to go in your royal dress, because this is why Bhishma Dev lived. Bhishma Dev lived and went through all he went through, so that all of you could be established as the next monarchs of the kingdom. And therefore, when he sees you in your royal outfits, then he'll be pleased. He'll feel like his life was meaningful. And so Yudhishthira did that. He dressed up and he went with Krishna. And there they arrived at the spot where Bhishma Dev was lying on the bed of arrows. And there on that spot, Yudhishthira looked at Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev looked at Yudhishthira. And Bhishma Dev had so much compassion for the Pandavas. Bhishma Dev said in a beautiful verse, Nahyasya karhichit papan puman veda viditsitam na vijigyasaya yukta muyanti kavayopihi. He looked at Yudhishthira, he looked at the Pandavas and he said, no one can understand the plan of Krishna. You had all righteousness, you had all knowledge, you had all piety, you had Krishna as your constant companion, you had everything, you had all the protectors, but still you had to undergo so many trials and tribulations and calamities in your life. Muyanti kavayopihi, no one can understand how Krishna arranges things in this world. And Bhishma Dev offered his deep condolences to Yudhishthira for everything he had to go through. But then Yudhishthira asked him, Bhishma Dev, you are a treasure house of wisdom. Please share with us your wisdom. And so what Bhishma Dev began to do is he began to speak on the bed of arrows. And when Bhishma Dev began to speak on the bed of arrows, he began speaking incredible wisdom. We all know about the Bhagavad Gita, we all know about different conversations, but perhaps this outpouring of wisdom from the mouth of Bhishma Dev is one of the most historic discourses in wisdom in the whole of history. It occurs in the 12th book of the Mahabharata, known as the Shanti Parva. And the amazing thing is that Bhishma Dev started speaking and he continued on for 56 days. I mean, imagine that. You know, he started speaking, he had so much to say, he had so much to share, he had so much he wanted to reveal to the world that he ended up speaking for 56 days. And his teachings constitute 360 chapters in the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is 18 books long, and the Shanti Parva is the 12th book. And the most amazing thing is that this 12th book, the Shanti Parva, consists nearly half of the Mahabharata. Half of the Mahabharata is Bhishma Dev speaking on the bed of arrows. And there, Bhishma Dev speaks all about different aspects of Dharma. You see, navigating your journey in this world is so complex because you have to navigate and attend to so many different things. He had a duty, we have a duty in our occupation, we have a duty in our stage of life, we have a duty to our family, we have a duty to society. There are sometimes emergency duties, then we have our spiritual duty. And how do we balance all of these things? So Bhishma Dev began speaking about all of these different duties, and Yudhishthira was patiently hearing. And in the Shanti Parva, at one point, Bhishma Dev talks about how one must overcome 5 things. And when we overcome these 5 things, Bhishma Dev says, we escape the life of mediocrity and we ultimately find the success in whatever we're looking for. And so these are the 5 things that Bhishma Dev says one has to overcome if they want to find success. And these are so universal that they can apply to any material thing, and they can also obviously apply to our spiritual journey as well. So the first thing Bhishma Dev says that one must overcome if they want to be successful in their journey is that one must overcome laziness. Yes, the first thing he says is that this tendency to not give the best of our efforts, not give the best of our attention, not to give our heart to what we're doing, to do something half-heartedly, to do something but not really believe in it, to do something but not really be conscious and of how much it requires to actually achieve. This, Bhishma Dev says, must be overcome. What often happens in our life is we become lazy in our commitments which surround the successes that we're looking for. Like I was reading, someone was telling me the other day, any footballer on a pitch, he was giving me the example of Messi. He says they studied Messi, and they studied in an average match. Do you know how much of the match Messi actually has the ball? 2 minutes. Yeah, it's about 1.5 minutes. In 1.5 minutes in a 90-minute match, Messi only has the ball for 1.5 minutes. The rest of the 88.5 minutes, he's running around the pitch, he's sliding, he's running, but no one's passing him the ball, and all kinds of other things. But that's part of it. Because unless you do all of that, you won't get those 1.5 minutes where you can do what you need to do. And therefore, even the greatest footballers, they don't actually hold the ball for that much of the match. And that's a very interesting principle, because that's something of that is also true in spiritual life, that we live for moments of ecstasy. We live for moments of experience. We live for moments of revelation. We live for moments of being moved in our heart. But those moments can and will come, but there's 88.5 minutes around that where you have to run, you have to wake up, you have to do other things, you have to graft a little bit and be disciplined and be committed. And therefore a devotee invests in that part of their life. I often think about how Srila Prabhupada, everyone saw his achievements, but Srila Prabhupada lived in an invisible world that many people didn't see as well. Everyone saw Prabhupada's achievements, but they maybe didn't see the 6 years where Prabhupada was all alone in the Radha Damodar temple as a lone mendicant, just struggling, by his own words, crying alone in the wilderness. The world saw Prabhupada's achievements, but they didn't see what he was doing every single morning when the rest of the world was sleeping, when he was waking up and translating. That they didn't see. The whole world saw Prabhupada's achievements, but they didn't see his struggle when he first came to America, all alone in the Lower East Side. So all of these things have to be invested in. And therefore, Bhishma Dev says, if you overcome laziness, then you overcome the danger of mediocrity. The next thing Bhishma Dev says that one has to overcome, if they want to overcome mediocrity, is he says one has to overcome comfort. The tendency to always want to be in a comfortable situation. Comfort can often be our greatest enemy, because comfort and aspiration are always at odds. And who is ready to give up comfort for aspiration? That person is the person who achieves their goals. If we look, there's different ways to be comfortable in this world. Some people are comfortable in material life. But then what will happen is that something will happen which will jolt us out of that comfort. And then we come to spiritual life. But then sometimes what happens is we become comfortable in spiritual life. And so what will often happen is we'll get an opportunity to be jolted out of that comfort even in our spiritual life, because ultimately the comfort that we seek is to be comfortable in Krishna consciousness. There's a difference between being comfortable in your spiritual life and being comfortable in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, any externally comfortable situation, whether it's made up of material factors or whether it's made up of spiritual factors, ultimately is an illusion. The only comfort is when we're situated in our actual consciousness of Krishna, that inner state of comfort. And so the great souls, the most progressive people, what they're constantly doing is either grasping the opportunity of discomfort coming in their life, not by their own choice but by the forces of nature, and they're embracing that discomfort and moving, or they're voluntarily taking on discomfort in order to move to higher levels of consciousness. And so Bhishma Dev says that if you ultimately want to find your spiritual or any aspirations, you have to overcome comfort. The third thing he says you have to overcome is you have to overcome pride. Because pride imprisons us into our current way of functioning. A proud person is full of it, as they say in colloquial language. And therefore there's no room for anything new to go in. And so Bhishma Dev says that unless one engenders a humility, unless one opens up their consciousness in that way, then it's very, very difficult for one actually to grasp the wisdom, the knowledge, the inspiration required to take them to a higher level of achievement. And so this, the great souls are always humble, they're always eager to learn. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's God himself, even he's eager to learn. For example, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu travels to South India and he comes to Vidyanagar, he comes to the Godavari, and there he meets Ramananda Rai. And you know, when you're a sannyasi and when you're traveling and when you're only in a place for a few days, then you always get the mic. They're like, you give the class, you're only here for a few days. And Mahaprabhu says, no, I don't want to speak, I want to hear. I want to hear from my devotee, Ramananda Rai. And there Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just hears, because showing us that the rhythm of life is that one must always take in new things. One must always be open. We know that even Lord Ram was going around the kingdom incognito to find out what people were saying about him, to find out how he could improve. So when one has that level of humility, that level of openness of heart, then they, by overcoming pride, they also overcome mediocrity. The next thing that Bhishma Dev says that one has to overcome, the first thing is one has to overcome laziness. The second thing is that one has to overcome comfort. The third thing one has to overcome is pride. And the fourth thing one has to overcome, I forgot it, that's why I was just trying to buy myself time there. I didn't failed miserably in that. There it is, yes. The fourth thing he says is interesting. He says the fourth thing you have to overcome is fear of public opinion. Interesting one. Oftentimes we limit ourselves because of what other people think. We limit ourselves because of other people's opinions. We limit ourselves because of the expectations and the noises around us. And therefore, Bhishma Dev says that one should learn to break free from this. It doesn't mean that we don't listen to other people's opinions. It doesn't mean that other people's expectations don't matter. But everyone's expectations around you don't matter equally. Everyone will have an opinion. Everyone will have an idea of who and what they think you should be. But what the teachers explain to us is that the opinions of those who know us, those who love us, and those who have the spiritual wisdom to actually help us, their opinions and expectations count for more. And therefore we don't allow everyone to have an equal say in how we live our life. Because if we become completely exposed to all the opinions around us, then what we'll find is we get debilitated. And therefore Bhishma Dev says that while one should learn and one should take feedback and help from others, one shouldn't allow oneself to be imprisoned within the opinions of others, because that can severely limit one's ability to progress. And the final thing that Bhishma Dev says one has to overcome is procrastination. Even when we overcome all of these things and we know what we should do, there's always a tendency to put it off, to delay it, to think that there will be an ideal time. In one Shastra it's explained that there are 6 types of inferior disciple, and one of the types of inferior disciple is known as Jyotishakaha. And Jyotishakaha literally means the astrologer disciple. And the astrologer disciple is the one who's waiting for the perfect astrological constellation to occur, when everything is aligned in the perfect configuration. And then at that moment, they will do it. Unfortunately, that constellation only appears once in a kalpa. So we shouldn't constantly wait for a perfect situation. There is no perfect situation in the world. We start where we are, we do what we can, and we invest what we have, and then we start moving forward. And by doing this, by being progressive, by actually beginning to take that journey with one step, and then we overcome the danger of being limited to a mediocre life. So spirituality becomes boring when we become limited by these things. And so these are some ideas that I wanted to share with you. I think we're all struggling with all of these things. As I share these things with you, then I'm very much aware that this is also something that I also have to work on, we all have to work on. But if we do this, we will find that we have a very active, a very dynamic, a very a spiritual life which has a lot of vitality. And this is the opportunity given to us. So yes, let me stop here, and let me see whether any of you may have any comments, questions, or things you would like to ask. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, thank you so much for this conversation. I just have a couple of questions. One is about the last question in the checklist. If you consider
Speak
that...
on the mic. Hold on 1 second.
It's not working.
Is the button?
It's mute.
It's on mute.
Oh. No? Good?
Yes.
Very well. Maharaj, thank you so much for this, for discussing this topic that I feel that is so relevant for all of us. So I have a couple of questions. I think I will start with this last point that you talk about, the wisdom from Bhishma Dev. So about the first 2 principles, laziness and the second is comfort. So basically the first one is how to differentiate like when it's laziness and burnout. And I'm saying this because in my own experience, I have had moments in my life when I think that I have been giving a lot and actually too much, that honestly I have been like literally burned out. And then I feel myself, I have been feeling guilty because, oh my God, you're so lazy, you should be doing more, etc., etc. But I think that my experience have pushed me to understand that in someone or another, they are not the same. And it's important to recognize when it's laziness and when it's burnout. And then the second one is...
Okay, shall we do that one first?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so how do we balance laziness with over-endeavor and burning out? You see, in the world, our tendency is to go to extremes and to cancel and to go from one to the other, and to kind of cancel one by saying, if I come out of this, then I'll go there, and therefore I shouldn't. Yeah, and that's what we kind of our mentality. So the first thing is that we never practice spiritual life in isolation. We always have good people around us, people who can give us feedback, people who can give us guidance. people who can tell us how we can bend ourselves without breaking ourselves. Therefore, devotees are the via medium who kind of help us to understand how much we can go. If I think about myself, one time I gave a talk and I was talking about the mistakes I felt I made in my spiritual life. And one of the mistakes I felt like I made was for a very good proportion of my years in spiritual life, I never actually let any devotees into my life. I was like, these guys are nice, but keep a distance. Like, don't let them get too close. Like, some of it was because of pride, because I was like, I got it down, I know what I'm doing. Some of it was because of fear, like, I don't know what I'm going to do if these guys come into my life. Like, they might ask me to do something I don't want to do. And some of it was probably shyness, like I just felt like, who am I? Why should any devotee, like, I don't want to sit there talking about my life, like waste someone's time. So for a combination of these reasons, I never let devotees that close. Later on, when I did, I found it was actually the most amazing thing, that if there's no one in your life to push you, actually for most of us, we are just going to get lazy. There's this beautiful story of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, who went to distribute books in, the communist countries under great risk of his own life, and he came later to meet Srila Prabhupada. And he came into the room, and Srila Prabhupada was so appreciative of his efforts that Prabhupada almost began crying. Prabhupada brought him over, he embraced him, and he was rubbing his head, and he said, you have become so dear to my spiritual master for the effort that you made, for the great risk you have taken. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said to Srila Prabhupada, we only did it because you pushed us. And Prabhupada said, my spiritual master pushed me. I am pushing you. And maybe in the future you will push others. And just as one carriage pushes another carriage and the whole train goes back, that is the process. So I think we need someone to push us, because otherwise the tendency is to just again rest back. So yes, a loving push from the devotees, something.
I appreciate that, and especially when you say that it's good when others tells you when you are giving too much that you need to take some rest. And then the second part of the question is about comfort and basically this and self-care. Recently I have found Urmila Mataji work in Career Dharma, and I'm loving that book. And basically what she talks about is the importance of recognize our nature and engage our nation in a spiritual life and in material life, and then offer that, of course, in service to Krishna. And then my other reference is I have done a training with Karuna Care with Rambaru Mataji, and they are amazing in teaching about the importance of endeavoring in doing service, but then at the same time focusing on self-care. So basically my question goes in terms of like the balance between go out of your comfort zone, but not so hard, not so like to the extreme that you are going against your nature, and then later on your own nature will go out in somewhere or another, and then you ended up with resentment or just going back to stage 0 after you try to push yourself to advance to stage 10 without going to the 1, 2, 3, 4 and all of that. So maybe some words about that too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I said that, we shouldn't be comfortable in material life. So I think everyone gets that, because there is no comfort in material life. But then I said we shouldn't be comfortable in spiritual life. But why is that such a bad thing? Because someone may say it's good. We need to be comfortable in our spiritual life. We need to find a life situation that's steady. We need to find an ashram that works. We need to find a varna and a dharma that resonates with us. We need security. We need stability. Yes, for sure. But the point here is that even once you have all of that, we should not think that that is the goal. Dharma svanostita pumsham vishvakshena kathashuya notpadayad yadi ratim shrama eva hi kevalam. There you go, there's a quote for Labor Day. Shrama is in that verse. Krishna says, all the dharma that you perform, if it ultimately doesn't lead you to falling in love with Krishna, then it's actually a useless labor. It's a useless waste of time. Now that doesn't mean it's useless in and of itself. It's a foundation, it's a stage, it's a facility. But we shouldn't be comfortable with just that. That doesn't mean we don't need it. We need it, but it's not enough. Therefore, by all means, have a comfortable, secure spiritual life. We all need that. But we should realize that's not the end. From there, I have to elevate my consciousness to actually find comfort in being with Krishna. Because even all our arrangements in Varnashram Dharma will ultimately be taken away at some point, because that's the nature of the world. So again, we have this, we use it, it's almost like scaffolding. Is that a word? You know what scaffolding is, right? Like you're trying to build your house of your spiritual life, so you need scaffolding. But eventually even that scaffolding will come down, and then you have to be able to stand. That doesn't mean you don't need the scaffolding, but it means you have to understand that that is a temporary measure that's there, that's meant to lead you to something more self-sufficient. That's the point. Is that okay? Thank you.
Together.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I cannot express my feeling how thankful I am to Prabhupada and Thakurji that today I'm getting an opportunity to see you face to face, and this is my first time meeting a saint also. So I'm really thankful and very happy. My question is that how to handle non-devotees at home, even though you are ignoring their spiritual opinions, but you still have to deal with them on a day-to-day life. Adding more here, that even though you are serving them prasadam all the time.
Okay, so sometimes we are in the midst of individuals, we're living with individuals, we're functioning with people who we have a relationship with, who at the same time may not share our spiritual aspirations. So what do we do in that situation? We cannot force anyone. Even Krishna doesn't force Arjuna. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, after telling everything to Arjuna, Krishna says, Iti te jnanamakyatam guyat guyataram maya vimrashet tasheshena yatheshasi tatha kuru. Krishna says to Arjuna, I've given you all the knowledge. Now you think about it, challenge it, reflect on it, analyze it, and then you do what you want to do. Everyone around us is strategically placed by Providence to contribute something to our spiritual journey. Some of them are favorable, some of them aren't. Some of them are encouraging, some of them aren't. We shouldn't just look to see what we can get from others, but in being around them and doing what we can do to serve in whatever way we can, we're also developing our spiritual life. And so be patient, be kind, and over time you may see that individuals who you feel are very far away may begin to change their perceptions. They may not, but we can only try our best. And meanwhile, it doesn't have to hold back your spiritual journey, because spirituality, Krishna consciousness is a very internal thing. And so even if externally you feel there's some limitation, Sometimes that external limitation can lead to an internal intensity that moves you forward in your spiritual journey. And so Rupa Goswami, he wanted to leave everything behind and join Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent him a letter. And in that letter, he penned one cryptic verse. Padavyasinini nari vyagrapi griha karmashu tadeva svadayatyantar navasangara sayanam. He penned this cryptic verse, and Rupa Goswami understood what the Lord was telling him. In the verse, he said, there is a woman, and the woman is married, but the woman has another lover. So what she does is she goes home and she performs her duties even more attentively, so nobody will assume or suspect anything, but all the while she is thinking of her lover. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wasn't encouraging promiscuity or anything like that, just to make that point. But you understand the point that your heart has reached somewhere. And even though externally there may be a limitation, internally one can continue growing. So yes, take your time, be patient. It's also a little bit shocking for the people around us when we take up Krishna consciousness. Like, we can't see it, but they can see something changing radically. And, yeah, exactly. It's like, tilak, bead bag, all these things, So like, just be patient. It is quite shocking, They think they're going to lose you. That's the thing, because you're changing. So, it's okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you again for a wonderful class. So, you were speaking about finding someone that can help you.
Can you
You just have to flick the switch.
and no need to mute.
Hare Krishna, please. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you again. So, in speaking about finding someone that can push you or guide you, how would you advise someone that might have a devotee that maybe has more of an lone wolf, or like you had mentioned, not one that's outward as much, or that's more inward or introvert, or more lone wolf? How would you advise them in their spiritual life to get that type of guidance and counsel?
Actually, statistics say that in this world, if someone has 2 to 5 relationships, significant relationships, they're doing well. Even the most extroverted people don't necessarily have that many close relationships. So to have a close relationship with someone is not characteristic of an extrovert or an introvert. It's just a matter of investment. It's a matter of being ready to be a little bit vulnerable. It's a matter of spending that time and realizing that if we look at the history of Vaishnavism, nobody is self-made. It just doesn't happen. Every great Vaishnav was guided and molded and nurtured and educated by another great Vaishnav. And so that person can appear in our life, and it's not necessarily the amount of time or the amount of physical proximity, but it's really someone who you really meet hearts with, who is able to inspire you to come out of that comfort zone. Someone once said to me, the greatest thing you can have in your life is someone who has more faith in you than you have in yourself. And so we're looking out, who is that person? There's so much we can achieve. Hanuman, he could jump from one country to another, but he just needed someone to tell him. Remember that? He just needed someone to say in his ear, you can do it. then he could do it. So all of us, we suffer from lack of confidence. We can do it, but we need that empowerment, we need that help. And it's not a matter of being extrovert or introvert. I'm also introverted. But it's a very beautiful thing. And yes, when they asked Srila Prabhupada, what is the most important verse in the Vedic literature? On different occasions, Prabhupada said different things, but on one occasion he quoted this verse. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tata guru tasyaite katita hyarta prakashante mahatmana. One time Srila Prabhupada, when he was asked, what's the most important verse, he quoted this verse. Yasya deve para bhaktir. One must develop unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, but only when one has that similar level of faith in the devotee. Then that combined faith of faith in the Lord and faith in the devotee, that combined faith reveals to one all the imports of Vedic literature. So,
Can I ask a question this way?
Who was first?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, thank you so much for the wonderful lecture. One thing I was just wondering about was, in general, when we're trying to overcome these barriers that Bhishma was warning us about, and sometimes I wonder, like, what should we be striving for? Like, we don't want to stay mediocre in the sense that, we don't want to be obviously just materially comfortable, not striving to make any spiritual progress. But does spiritual progress mean like an internal deepening of our spiritual connection? Does it mean, striving or endeavoring to spread Krishna consciousness externally, like making a temple or making an ashram or preaching more? Is there one thing? Like sometimes I feel like sometimes people feel some pressure that what it means to develop your Krishna consciousness means to be a better book distributor, say, or something like that. Yeah. Or is there any real difference? Is it the case that by deepening your internal connection, these other things kind of flow naturally anyway?
Thank you so much. Yeah, such a nice question. What does it actually mean to grow in your Krishna consciousness? Krishna has given us different things. Krishna has given us energy. Krishna has given us ability. Krishna has given us facility. Krishna has given us various identities. And the perfection of our life is to use whatever we've been given back in service to Him. So what does it mean to grow in spiritual life? To grow in spiritual life means to come to a point where one begins to look at themselves and say, everything I've been given by Krishna, whatever that may be, is all used back in His service. It may, in some devotees' lives, manifest in big projects and taking up big positions. In other devotees' lives, it may manifest in doing a seemingly very simple service, but with deep devotion and dedication. It all looks different because in the spiritual world, nothing is stereotyped. But one just has to look at their life and ask themselves, what am I holding back? In this verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela is explained, the fourth verse of the first chapter, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to freely give love. And in the commentary, Jiva Goswami says there's three types of people who miss out on that. And he says the Dhana Kapat, the Bala Kapat, and the Prema Kapat. He says one person who misses out on it is the one who's holding back their resources. They have resources, they can give that to Krishna. but they're holding it back. And he says the second type of person that misses out on it is the balakapat, the one who has energy, who has ability, who has the opportunity to make some effort, but they're holding that back. And then he says the third type of person that misses out is the prema kapat, the one who may be giving their resources and may be giving all of their energy, but is holding back their heart. They're holding back from doing it willingly, doing it lovingly. And so when we invest our prema, our bala, our dhana, whatever that may be, then that means we're growing. So manasa deho geho jo kichumor arpila tue pade nanda kishor. Whatever we have, my mind, my body, my home, for you, Krishna. So it seems very far, but it just means every part of our life we have to begin connecting it more consciously. And then the Vaishnavas will come in your life and reveal what it is you need to do to make a bigger contribution. Yes.
I think there was a question back there first, somewhere.
Hare Krishna. Does it work? Okay. So Maharaj, you said procrastination. Jyotish devotee, some phrase you used. How do you explain that in context of patience? Because sometimes in my personal situation, I have felt like, I'm glad I waited and I didn't jump and, do it. So, how do you balance that?
Yeah, how do you balance that?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So Rupa Goswami says, Utsahan Nishchayad, enthusiasm and patience. What we can think is that patience without enthusiasm is the mode of ignorance. Enthusiasm without patience is the mode of passion. But enthusiasm with patience is the mode of goodness. So, as long as your enthusiasm has an inner eagerness, an inner meditation, an inner orientation of being very alert as to when the right time is and being desirous for that time to come, because one has an eager desire to carry out what they're meant to do, then that kind of patience is absolutely fine. Srila Prabhupada is the living example that the spiritual master's orders can be delayed but never denied. So Prabhupada knew what he needed to do in 1922, but he didn't actually leave till 1965. But what was it? It was a lifetime in preparation. So even though Srila Prabhupada waited, he wasn't inactive. There was an inner enthusiasm, there was an eagerness, there was a meditation, there was a constant investment in how will I work towards doing this. And as long as that activity is there, definitely, everything has its timeline. So yes, enthusiasm and patience.
Maybe just one more question. Yeah, go ahead. Let me move the mic back here.
What are some... Can you share with us some practical ways by which we can address our pride? How we can challenge our pride and overcome that hurdle of mediocrity?
So how do we overcome our own pride? Some practical ways. I think the first thing is to take feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. So to somehow or other find a situation in which one can receive and open their heart to finding out where and how they can improve. Perhaps there's not enough of that in the world today. In the Brahmacharya ashram, we used to do something, every few months, whereby we would all, 20 of us, sit in a circle and we'd all get a piece of paper. And on the piece of paper, we'd write the name of the person sitting to the left of us. And then we'd offer some words of encouragement and improvement. And everyone would get a minute, and then it would go around. And then it would go to the next person. And by, within 20 minutes, you'd have a lot of feedback. And it was very powerful, actually, because, there are people around you who have so much valuable information about how you can speed up your journey. But oftentimes we create an aura around us where nobody can come and share that with us. So to be open to that feedback, I think, is a very practical way of beginning to remove that pride. And then again, I will come back again and stress that point of having someone who is our coach, who is our guide, who is basically helping to craft our journey, setting us goals, bringing us out of what we know, pushing us. I think that's also, again, I'll stress that as a very, very important point. So, yes, I think I could say many other things on that, but I think time is going, so let me stop there. Thank you so much.